going to give a brief presentation about your article chapter review presentation that involves summary and evaluation. There will be two parts to this presentation. The first part will be an example or model presentation. And the second part, I will go over in specific detail the structure of the presentation that I would like you to do. All right. So let's go ahead and get started with the example presentation. What do you see? Right, okay. What do you see in the picture?
The woman.
Okay. Is the woman young or old? Young? Okay. Does anyone see an old woman?
Now I see.
You see the old woman? Yeah? Where's the old woman? Right, she's, that's her mouth, that's her nose. This is her hair. You see it? Okay. So, researchers say that if you're under the age of about 50 years old, you'll see a young woman. And if you're over 50, you'll see an old woman at first. Okay. So this example shows us how much our perceptions are influenced by our context, our history, okay, what we've seen before, what our life experience is like. Okay? I have another one for you. Which color of dots are the same in this panel and this panel? Everyone take a guess. Violet. Violet? Okay. Amal, what do you think? Pink. Okay. Asko? Red. Okay. Red. Okay. Actually, the colors that are the same are this gray and this gray. Okay. I will talk about a TED Talks that starts with this illusion. Okay. And it's very interesting when he takes the red over here, and it's not the same. And he takes the green, and I think one other color. And then when he takes the gray over, everyone's like, whoa. Okay. So why do the grays look so different? Yes, exactly. So the background, the context that they're in shapes your view, your perception of the color, right? Okay. So for my article review, I read an article entitled "The Power of Perceptions, Imagining the Reality You Want." Okay. The author's name was Amanda Eniadi. She is a cancer survivor, a CNN correspondent, and author of the blog The Chat. So I will start with a summary of the article. She begins by talking about Viktor Frankl. Now, Viktor Frankl was a man who lived during World War II, and he was a prisoner in a concentration camp. And he had a very difficult situation, extremely difficult circumstances. And he survived, and he says that part of the reason he survived was that he continually thought of and imagined a better life. He continually thought of his wife, he thought of his friends, he thought of happy times, and that helped him to survive mentally. Right? And he claimed that, there is always a stimulus and there is always a response. Right? very basic scientific idea. He says you can't control the stimulus in many cases, but you can control your response, how you respond to the stimulus. She goes on to say that there is a bias against creativity. Do you know what a bias is? A bias is an attitude against something, or it could be in favor of something. Do you remember when we reviewed assumptions? A bias is very similar to an assumption. Okay.
With something, agree?
So it could be something you agree with or disagree with, but for example, if you're a scientist and you think that if you're a scientist and you think that I don't know, reading novels is the best way to improve your reading ability, and you set up an experiment where half of the group reads novels and half reads magazine articles, you need to be very careful not to be biased toward the novel reading group. Okay, so maybe give them extra time on the test, or give them easier questions, things like that. Yeah, so you want to not be biased as a scientist. Okay. But she's claims there's this bias against creativity, that people don't like uncertainty, right? And that's kind of the foundation or most important part of creativity. Okay. She talks about the placebo effect. Have you heard of the placebo effect? What is the placebo effect? You're a nurse, right?
Placebo for us is something is a real dosage for the real reaction for some kind of a drug. It's not a real drug, but we give them. So it's but the patient he don't know that they are not using the real drug, but then it acts in the same with the real drug.
Mm-hmm. And what's the effect of the placebo, of the unreal drug?
For example, it's a painkiller. It is the same action. The pain will release as well.
Yes. Okay. So let's say everyone in this class has a headache, really bad headache, and we say, okay, let's do a scientific experiment. I'm going to give you a drug that will make you feel better, and tell me how you feel after you take the drug. But I don't tell you that for Atsuko and Amal, the pill is just sugar. There's nothing inside. Even though you took a drug, just sugar, not a drug that helped you, it wasn't Advil, you still will report that you feel better. And you will. You will feel better. So it's an example of the power of the mind to control circumstances and situations. Okay. She talks a lot about a gentleman by the name of Bo Lotto. He has an excellent TED Talks where he shows you lots of optical illusions, just like the one we saw at the beginning with the different colored dots. Okay. And he has a lot of important points in the article. He talks about how we are defined by ecology, or the context, the environment in which we live. And ecology is always relative, historical, and empirical. She discusses many other cases. Another case she talks about is the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin case. Have you heard of this? So, Trayvon Martin was a young black man who was walking around a mostly white neighborhood about a year ago. And George Zimmerman was a white man who was on the neighborhood watch team who was looking out for suspicious people. And he started following him, and he started confronting Trayvon Martin, asking him why he was here, all this stuff. It's unclear exactly what happened, but there was some kind of conflict between them, and it ended with George Zimmerman shooting and killing Trayvon Martin. I think it was in Florida, yes. And she uses this, or with another sociologist, uses this as an example to say, well, here was a young black man just wandering around at night. He had a hoodie with the hood up, It made this white man feel very suspicious, very uneasy. Okay, and the point was made: if you take the same black man and put him on a basketball court in March during the tournament, and everyone is very comfortable with that, and wants that person to succeed and win the game and everything. So, very interesting example of how context can shape your perceptions. Okay, and as Lotto says, this is a great quote from him in the article, you must see yourself see. Okay, so it talks about how important it is to step out of your context and see how you're seeing the world. Okay. And she has this excellent quote here, and I would like to cite it in whole. We have to fight for our ability to imagine the world we want, because one form of oppression is telling people that they're not allowed to imagine something better and happier. Okay. Very inspiring quote, I thought. All right, let's get into the evaluation section. There were both strengths and weaknesses from this article. The first strength was it was incredibly positive. I felt very good after reading this article. I thought to myself, I want to change my life and improve it for the better. Okay, and as I just mentioned, it was inspiring. It made me want to do something important. It was also very well cited. She used a lot of different references that pertained to her idea of how perception is shaped by our world. So it was very well cited. There were several weaknesses, though. Probably the biggest one was that there was poor analysis. So everything that she cited was just basically saying, this was great, and this was great, and this was great too. By the way, this was great. Okay, so she didn't really have any critical analysis of the sources she included. And as I say here, there was a lack of contrast between the sources. Everything was just kind of the same. Great, excellent. I was kind of disappointed because she offered few practical implications. At the end, I was looking for something that said, you should try this to make your life better, or you should try this to use what we've learned from this article in your life. So I would have liked to see more of that. And finally, another weakness is it was a little unfocused. I wasn't sure what her goal was, or her hypothesis was in writing the article. It was kind of all over the place a little bit. Okay? Takeaways. What did I learn from this whole process? One thing I learned was that one source will often lead you to another source, that you almost have to read or see in order to understand the first source. So her first picture has the different colored dots on different backgrounds, and I was like, what is that? And so I had to go to the TED Talks and watch that video to understand the background. Another thing is it kind of, like I said before, it kind of helped me or inspired me to follow some of my goals. And it also made me think about when are my perceptions shaped by my history, my personal background, and it made me more aware of that. Any follow-up research that I might do, I might look into research on creativity, what makes people creative, gives people interesting ideas, so on and so forth. What helps people to achieve their goals, things like that. Okay. Any last questions, comments? Are you interested in reading her article? Yeah, Rena says yes. Anybody not interested? Okay. So it was a very interesting article. I'll put it up on Carmen, as well as the TED Talks. The TED Talks, if nothing else, is